They didn't care if I was the police. They didn't care about nothing else. That's what kind of folks we're talking about. They are not scared of me. They sure aren't scared of y'all.
I use Procrime targets on the range for all the benefits of steel with none of the drawbacks. They're made in the USA too. Pick up a set to make your shooting more fun and effective.
I've been a pro police officer since 1996. I would say the 1900s. I got 2,900 hours of all kinds of training and whatever. I was a SWAT team leader for about 6 years. In Enid, Oklahoma, we did about 50 or 60 high-risk warrants. I did some task forces on gang and street crime. I've written over 130 magazine articles on gun stuff and other stuff, leadership, that kind of thing. I've been in patrol. I run the 911 center, as cool as that sounds. And I've been in the training division. That's where I'm at right now. I'm the captain over training in my department. I'm a complete law enforcement firearms instructor, and I'm the training coordinator and range master for the Enid, Oklahoma Police Department. If that's not impressive enough, I'm also friends with Hulk, Wonder Woman, and R2-D2. We're all like that. Is everybody sufficiently impressed? We want to watch the class now? Little pre-class information. I don't think there's such a thing as a gang expert. I am certainly not one. But I am a very range master-centric person. That's where I got my first firearms instruction training and my first instructor certification through Range Master. Are you familiar with that? Maybe not familiar? Go to Range Master classes. Absolutely. It's Tom Givens and his wife Lynn Givens. They're amazing. Go do that. You're going to have heard some of this before if you've been to Range Master classes. If you haven't, then it's all my original material. I am. If you haven't, you really need to. But, so if you have been, you'll hear some of this stuff will sound very familiar to you. And again, not an expert, and there will be war stories. There are a lot of folks that say, you know, if you're an instructor, you shouldn't tell too many war stories. People don't like that. Well, they can just sit back and say, I just concur, because I will tell you a couple stories. So what is a street gang? Anybody kind of have an idea of what you would call a street gang? Anybody know? There's no wrong answer. There's a wrong answer, but not for you. Here's what the government's definition is, and the government did something right with this one. It's actually pretty good. 3 or more persons engaged in criminal activity collectively with an identifiable leadership, ongoing relationships, common names, signs, symbols, or colors, exclusivity. What's exclusivity?
As if you're one, you can't be another.
Yeah, you're basically, I don't just let anybody in. It's a little bit like ASP, a little bit like the conference. Not just anybody can walk in here. Turf or territory. The typical age is 14 to 24 years of age for a gang member. Why is that, you think? Why is 14 the low end? Why would a 14-year-old... What's that?
Persuasion.
Easily to persuade and get into the fold, right? And they're usually desperate for somewhere to go. And we'll talk about that some more later. Why do you think 24 is the outer edge of that? Why is that the upper ceiling of age of a gang member? Incarcerated or dead?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Shortly.
They don't last very long, and there's very few retired gang members that are sitting on the porch just enjoying life. Just doesn't happen very often. So when we think about gangs, do we think about having those folks in our own house, in our own home, town? Does that ever occur to you? Where do you live, ma'am? Can I ask?
I'm in Greenville, South Carolina.
You have a gang there?
Probably.
I guarantee you do. Guarantee you do. Almost always guarantee you do. Has anybody ever heard of Enid, Oklahoma? Anybody not heard of Enid, Oklahoma? Most of us, right? We've got a little bit of a gang problem here and there. It's 50,000 people. We'll talk about that a little bit. So I checked, since we're doing this in Kansas, I checked some databases, and in 2012, there were 4,000 documented gang members in Kansas, in the state of Kansas, that we knew of. How many of them do you think there actually are? I'm sorry, 4,000 documented gang members. How many do you think there actually are? Because a documented gang member, so that means I go and talk to this lady, and she affiliates, and I write her down, and it goes in a database. How many of them do you think there really are? Twice that much? 10 times that much? There's no telling. There's no telling. In Wichita, Kansas. Anybody ever been to Wichita? It's a nice little town, right? Occasional gunfight here and there. 322, or 1 in every 322 people living in Wichita, Kansas is a gang member. That number is the same in almost every big city in the country. That's a very local problem. It's a very personal problem. Anybody know what Fusion is? Fusion is a part of Homeland Security, and their job is gathering data on all of us and gang members. We are constantly getting newer reports on gang problems. And we try to keep everything apolitical in these things, but there are some pro-crime politics in the world right now. Wichita is being sued. The Wichita Police Department is being sued for documenting gang members and putting them in a book so that the guys can give them special enforcement here and there. They don't like that. So gangs are going to continue to get worse and worse. So the first thing I want to teach you folks is how to recognize gang members. How do we recognize those folks? What do you see here in this picture? Isn't that neat? That's snow ground horses. There's 5 horses in that picture. If you get a chance to look that up, do it. It's really cool. Or if you want copies of the slides, email me later. I'll talk to you about that more later. So this is, again, a local problem. You haven't heard of Enid, Oklahoma. I'm guessing you haven't heard of Cleo Springs, Oklahoma. Population 325. Somebody just died. That is the definition of a small town in Oklahoma. This is at the Watermelon Festival in September of 2016 because, yes, that's a real thing too, to benefit their local fire department. Can you see what this guy is right here, what he's wearing right here? It's a little bit hard with the light. If you look real close at his back, you'll see that he is an outlaw gang member of the outlaw gangs from Woodward, Oklahoma, which is also not a very big town. He is there at the Watermelon Festival with his wife and son recruiting for the gang at the Watermelon Festival. So if you don't think there are gang problems in your town, rethink that, because there probably is. There very much probably is. So again, the war stories are going to start. Enid, Oklahoma, 50,000 population. Just a smidge under 50,000. Our county is maybe 60,000. I get a call one day, I was a patrol sergeant back when I was a real cop, of a lady being attacked by these 2 guys on motorcycles. So I'm the only one that can go. I pull in there, I see the guys drive out, and I wave them back in, they come back in. There's this guy with a tire iron, his wife, and these 2 thugs on motorcycles. And they are Mongols, gang members. They decided they didn't like the way she was driving. She cut them off, whatever. And they were going to go, the 2 of them, just beat this lady up because that's how they think. It's not, it's just not how you operate. You beat people up whenever you don't like what they're doing, right? So I pull in there, and I end up putting handcuffs on these 2 guys, putting them in the back of my car, still no backup, waiting. I hear motorcycle engines in the background. A whole bunch of them down the road. And they get closer and closer and closer. They pull up into the parking lot, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm the police. Look at me. Well-armed man in my prime. What are you doing? They start driving around me in a circle like a movie. And so I thought, well, I got an idea. Pop the trunk, get the old shotgun out. Thwack, thwack. Guess what their reaction was? Humor. They just thought it was funny. Said, oh, isn't he cute? That was my first experience with thwack, thwack, by the way. If you have never had that problem, they don't care. They were not afraid at all. So I ended up just getting in the car and taking off with those guys, and we had to leave. They were outnumbered. There was too many of them. They didn't care if I was the police. They didn't care about nothing else. That's what kind of folks we're talking about. They are not scared of me. They sure aren't scared of y'all. Right? Does that make sense? So then, shortly after that, I started getting real interested in gangs for obvious reasons. The ATF at one point in 2000, I think, 8 or 9, sued them, said, you're a criminal operation. you can't have that patch anymore. Their insignia. They sued and took that symbol and said, we now have a copyright on that. You can't use that anymore. We thought that was going to be a very good tool for us. So we brought the ATF in and FBI, a lot of state officials, because they were having a motorcycle rally, the Mongols were, that next weekend. So we thought this is going to be a great chance for us to run them out of town and, you know, give them the old not in my town speech. So they knew about it. They had better intel than we had. They showed up with T-shirts on instead of their actual leather cuts, which we'll show you here in a little while. The ATF agent goes up to one of the guys at the rally and says, you can't wear that, that's ours. He takes it off, throws it on the ground in the middle of the street, and urinates on it in front of all these cops. And there was 50 guys around him that were on his side, and we had about 10 of us. You think they're scared of y'all? They weren't scared of us at all. By the way, they ended up suing it back and getting their patch back, and they can still wear it now, in case you see one. So that is why this is my favorite kind of turd, the outlaw motorcycle gang member. You will notice here, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, this is what we call a cut. This is what we call a cut. This is a 3-patch club. You'll see 4-patch club, 2-patch clubs, and don't anybody math geniuses come up and say, oh, you got 4. That one doesn't count. Top rocker, middle, and bottom rocker. It's a 3-patch club. That's what you're looking out for. That's what we're going to try to avoid when it comes to motorcycle gangs. Anybody ever heard the term 1%er? 1%er? What's a 1%er?
So the AMA back.
Oh, don't tell the whole story, because I'm going to tell the story.
It's the 1% of people who ride motorcycles that are actually considered bad guys.
There you go. And did they get upset by being called that? Did they get upset about being called a 1%er? No. They love it. The AMA, not the one with the doctors, the American Motorcycle Association in 1947, there was a riot, maybe or maybe not, in Hollister, California. And people started having some kind of anti-motorcycle sentiment, like they were assuming that everybody was a thug if you're on a motorcycle. Couldn't be farther from the truth. So in response to that, they wrote an article and said, 99% of people who ride motorcycles are good, law-abiding citizens. And the outlaws were like, oh yeah, that's us. We're 1%ers. So when you see this diamond-shaped patch and the 1%, that's part of the folks we're looking for. They really enjoy that.